What's up guys, TechTine here, and this is the review of the controversial OnePlus Nord N300 5G. So before I begin, I just want to take a second and thank you all so much for watching my content. If you enjoy my videos, be sure to leave a thumbs up and make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. It really makes a big difference and just helps me out more than you think. With that being said, so I want to review this phone and give it its fair chance. And listen, this is kind of a hated phone, unfortunately, and I've seen it in my comments on my videos and other people's videos, but let's give it its fair shot. So I'm going to be dividing this review into a couple of categories. So we're going to be talking about design, display, camera, performance, the speaker, and also I'll end it all in a conclusion. So let's start with the design. And honestly, this is this phone's biggest pro. So this is a well-built, well-designed phones, and they really thought about the little stuff. For example, one, it's a boxier design that provides a better grip. Now the back is slippery though. The OnePlus logo has this glossy material, but the back has kind of this plastic soft material that is very slippery. And so I do highly recommend the case on it for sure. And the top of the phone does provide you with a dual camera sensor, which we will definitely talk about. And overall, just off of looks alone, this is a solid and well-built device. So like I said, it does have these little neat kind of design aspects that makes you think that OnePlus did really put the effort as far as design. So for example, on the right hand side you do have the power button, which is accompanied by also a fingerprint sensor, and it's fast, reliable, does what I expect it to do. And also mechanically it works great, so the buttons are tactile and really quick. Same deal with the volume up and down, which are located in the left hand side. So this overall, this is what makes this phone well built. So the mechanical buttons are really nice, the fingerprint sensor is fast. As far as the I/O goes, so they're located at the bottom, and you get a 3.5mm headphone jack. You also get a microphone, a really fast actually, 33-watt USB-C port, as well as the speaker, which also has this mesh around it that helps it protect it from dust and dirt that tries to get in the phone, or even pocket lint. And listen, that's also a really nice addition for a phone that only costs $230. So overall, the big picture of the design is that it's solid. I like it. I like the little neat features that not features, but the little attention to detail that they decided to add within the design of the phone. Definitely gets a thumbs up from me. And we're going to take a listen to the speaker also later on. So the biggest letdown that this phone has is this display right here. But here's the thing though, I wouldn't really panic because it's just a 720p display. And yes, it is only a 720p panel. So here's the deal. So this phone is like HD Plus, which is a downgrade from last year's N200's full HD Plus. And listen, that is a compromise, and I get that. But let's keep in mind that this phone, while the display is a huge downgrade, it's still overall though a decent display. If you can recall or not, the iPhone XR, or the XR, however you want to pronounce it, had also 720p. I'm not comparing the iPhone XR to this phone, of course, but I'm just saying that people were fine with that 720p display, and I feel like people would be fine with this display. Now I get why people are upset though. It's because this should have been or stayed at 1080p. You should not have downgraded from 1080p to 720p, and I get that. And definitely they don't get any extra points for bringing back 720p. On the contrary though, it does keep 90 Hz, so that's definitely a good thing. And listen, the display is a downgrade. No doubt about it. I'm not gonna argue that hey, it's a better panel. It's really not. It's kind of a similar panel to last year. It's just lower resolution, which no excuse. This is just a definite downgrade. However, when it comes to media consumption and watching videos, it's definitely an enjoyable experience. I'm not going to say that it's the best experience, but definitely gets the job done. However, I wouldn't upgrade from the N200 to the N300 just because it's a newer phone though. More on that later. Overall though, the display is decent. On the other hand, this phone kind of supports dual speakers. So there's the bottom facing speaker and also the front facing one, which kind of acts like a subwoofer, provides a much more enjoyable sound quality. So take a listen and I'll get back on some words with that. Watching. If you enjoy my videos, make sure you consider subscribing. It really means a lot to me. It helps out the channel plenty. So definitely appreciate anybody who subscribed and is willing to subscribe or watches my videos. I'm grateful for you guys for sure. All right, so now let's talk about this camera. On paper, it's an upgrade from the OnePlus N200. So you have a dual camera setup. The main sensor is a 48 megapixel sensor at f1.8 aperture, and you also have an additional sensor that acts as a depth sensor, so it's a 2 megapixel depth sensor. Now, the camera design, the way that it's integrated within the phone itself, some people may hate it, but me personally, I don't really find anything wrong with it. I think that it kind of makes sense. So I like the way that they designed it. And you also have a dual flash. So listen, a downgrade in display, but a definite upgrade in speaker quality. Do not argue with me, okay? So yeah, the speaker does get a fair upgrade. It's not the best that I've heard, just because at highest volumes it does kind of echo the sound a little bit, which I don't know why it does that, but it still gets fairly loud. Well, actually pretty loud, louder than a lot of phones at this price point. So now let's flip the page and talk about this camera system. So here we have a dual camera setup where the other sensor is basically a depth sensor. To me, it's useless. It has one thing that you need to worry about, which is the 48 megapixel main camera. And it's definitely an upgrade from the OnePlus Nord N200. So I did a full review on this phone's camera and the N200's camera. Both will be in the description below. The only problem that I have about this camera is color accuracy, especially with certain colors like red and yellow. And this problem really mainly happens indoors, especially for my testing. So like I said, these are the sample shots that I've took, but the full review will be in the description below. Overall though, it's definitely a huge upgrade from that garbage 13 megapixel sensor that the N200 had. So yeah, a bigger sensor, better camera quality from the N200. But if we're comparing it to phones at the same price point, I would say it comes pretty close to last place. Let's not hype it up too much. So now let's talk about specs. So on paper, this phone has the following specs. So you have the MediaTek Dimensity 810, which is based on a 6nm architecture. It is octa-core. You also have 4 GB of RAM, 64 GB of storage, and a nicely sized 5000 milliamp hour battery. So battery life on here is great, no doubt about it. And that's really all I have to say about battery life. Now, I did do a benchmark, but benchmarks really don't show you the entire story. But here's the scores that I've got. So a single core of 596 and a multi-core of 1780. And that's where you would expect phones at this price point to perform. I kind of want to say it's slightly better than phones priced at 228. So as far as the 3D benchmark goes, which helps test out the graphics performance, it scored a respectable 369. Now let me tell you this. So the daily performance, I found it to be smooth, no problem at all, especially since this phone does support the latest version of Android. So definitely gets a thumbs up for that. And opening apps and closing them is really fast, fluid. I didn't really get any problems from it at all. I do want to say that from time to time on rare scenarios, it did kind of crash here and there, but nothing too major that is worthy of mention. So performance as far as the daily task is pretty well. Now graphics performance, it did take a hit as far as quality, but when playing heavy graphic demanding games, it did just fine. Just what you would expect a $228 phone to do. And from my testing, it also did beat the OnePlus Nord N200 in performance, especially for the benchmarks. And when I looked at opening up daily apps, it was slightly faster and the graphics performance was slightly better. Now, keyword here is slightly. So I wouldn't just upgrade to the N300 just strictly for graphics performance or specs in general. Okay, now let me give you guys my final conclusion on this device. So listen to me carefully when I tell you this conclusion. This is not a bad phone by any means, especially for $228. No, in fact, for the fact that it's $228, this is not a bad phone. Put aside for a second that it has only 720p. The specs are up to par for this price point. The Camera specs is also fairly decent. Design, it looks nice in my opinion. It's really stellar. I really like the design actually. I, do we wish that it still had the 1080p from last year? Yes, of course. Um, but overall, though, this is not a bad phone for whatever it's worth. But at the same time, I kind of want to contradict myself and tell you this. It would not be my first option for that type of money. Let's be clear about that. There are better phones that are similar or slightly higher in price point. So the Moto G5G is a fair competitor at that price point, but then you can step it up, get the Galaxy A13 5G, which in my opinion is slightly better, or the Moto G Stylus 5G. Basically what I'm trying to say is there are options that make more sense. So that would mean that it's kind of hard for me to recommend this phone, but in a vacuum, it still is a fairly decent phone for the money. All right, do with that conclusion as you wish. I want to thank you all so much for watching, and please, if you haven't subscribed, make sure you subscribe. Let me know in the comments what you think. Keep an open mind, okay? Thank you all so much for watching, and I will catch you in the next one. Thank you for watching.